When you're fighting the boss, the sword is incredible. It deals so much damage and you can barely deal with it. You beat him, you get that sword, and nothing. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 boss weapons that get nerfed when you unlock them. At number 10 is the Yamato sword from Devil May Cry 4. We've talked before about how Virgil, the recurrent antagonist slash anti-hero brother to the main character Dante, is one of the most overpowered characters out there. Just look at his skill set. He can teleport around like crazy, create giant trees that can suck up all the life on Earth. He can literally cut through the fabric of reality, this guy. He's a beast. And a big contributing reason as to why is his sword, the Yamato. In his boss form, he can go absolutely nuts with this thing, blocking any and all attacks when he feels like it, teleporting multiple times in a row, summoning shadows to attack you on a moment's notice, whipping out these crazy huge combos whenever he wants. The boss fights against Virgil are some of the best in the entire series, but whenever you actually get to use the Yamato yourself as the player, it's not quite as impressive. So when you play as Virgil in the special edition versions of some of the games, it's actually impressive how they're able to incorporate most of his abilities as a boss into the moveset, but we're not talking about when you play as Virgil here. We're talking about when Dante gets the Yamato. It's one of the weapons Dante can use in his section of Devil May Cry 4. It was a few years before Capcom released a special edition of that game that let you play as Virgil, so for a while this was the only way you could play with the Yamato in the game, and it is not that impressive. Oh yeah, and Nero technically can use the Yamato in the game as well, but it only shows up when he's in Devil Trigger form. For Dante, his moveset is very limited compared to what Virgil can do with the weapon. He gets a whole style change for it called Dark Slayer style, which is pretty cool, don't get me wrong, but it's only really useful when you combine it with multiple weapons rather than just the Yamato. Devil May Cry 4 is the only game in the series where you can actually unlock Virgil's weapon rather than just get it for playing as Virgil, and this is one instance where it is not as awesome as you would hope. At number 9 is the Staff of Hermes from Assassin's Creed Odyssey. These games are known for their complicated and historical plot lines, which I'm gonna just go ahead and boil it down for you. It's get the magic weapon before the bad guy at its core. I mean, yeah, there's a lot more going on, but that's it at its core. There's the Apples of Eden, the sword from Assassin's Creed Unity. Then there's this, the Staff of Hermes, and I'm not even gonna try pronouncing the rest of this. Not touching it. Don't even ask me. You guys get angry when I mispronounce ones that I've only seen in text, and it was 30 years ago. So I'm just not touching that. This piece of Eden, one of the many artifacts left over by the precursors called the Isu, is in the lore of the games. It's maybe the most powerful thing introduced in the series yet. I mean, look at the list of powers this thing has. It gives you regeneration and healing powers, makes it so you don't have to eat or sleep, makes you physically stronger, allows you to manipulate energy, you can teleport. It does something called self-transmutation, which I guess is shape-shifting, and other thing, it makes you live forever. Anyone with this staff is basically unstoppable. At the end of the game, you find it held by Pythagoras, who is guarding the gates of Atlantis. You can fight him for it, and he's clearly super powerful with it, but you can't actually use it after that. The only way to unlock this thing is to complete the entire Atlantis DLC campaign, which finally gives you access to this weapon of ultimate power, except it doesn't really do anything that special. I mean, sure, it's powerful, but it doesn't really do anything a normal weapon can't. You can't start teleporting around, doesn't give you superhuman strength or healing abilities, it's just a regular weapon. It's a good one, but other than looking fancy, it just doesn't stand out much, which is kind of a huge disappointment. At number 8 is the Freeze Blast from Arkham City. Anyone who played the Arkham games remembered the Mr. Freeze boss fight, right? It's tough, it's tense, and it forces you to think on your feet. It's one of the best bosses in the series, and probably one of the most memorable fights in gaming, in all honesty. A big reason why Mr. Freeze was so intimidating was because of how dangerous he was. Just a few hits with the Ice Beam and Batman is stone dead, so you had to avoid him and try to take him out stealthily, knowing if he catches you, you only got a few seconds to get away, or you're done. This guy's tough. Of course, any weapon he gives you is going to be pretty disappointing because it's never going to be as good as what he keeps for himself. And yeah, the Freeze Blast, it's not that impressive. Sure, it can stun enemies for a few seconds, which is useful when you want to cheat your way outside the map, but outside that, it's kind of just a little grenade that makes a little poof when you throw it. It's not exactly a deadly ice weapon, it's more of a slightly intimidating snowball. And number 7, the Abyss Greatsword from Dark Souls, which this series has just an absolute ton of weapons, and many of them are created by taking a boss soul and forging them into weapon. In most cases, the weapon you get out of it will be based on whatever the boss was using, and disappointingly, they're often really not that great. The issue usually lies with the fact that a lot of boss weapons are really heavy, have high or unusual stat requirements, and often don't scale much with stats, and much more often than not require rare and expensive materials to upgrade. If you've built for it, these weapons can be incredibly powerful, but because they're so specialized, it can be hard to get a lot of use out of them, especially when you're doing your first playthrough any of these games. One of the most iconic weapons in the series is held by one of its most iconic bosses, Artorias the Abyss Walker from the Artorias of the Abyss DLC from Dark Souls 1. He is an absolute beast of a boss with a ton of attacks who is just all around incredibly dangerous and challenging. Some of his worst attacks include this jumping lunge attack and this somersault attack, this brutal attack where he summons giant abyssal explosion that makes him more powerful after using it. And the guy he's just plain vicious. There was no hope you'd be able to match this guy just from getting his weapon. And yeah, you don't. In comparison to the boss, when you're holding this thing, you are unbearably slow and clunky. In later games, they make it so you can emulate some of Artorias' moves like the somersault slash, but even then you're not nearly as fast and fluid as Artorias was. This is hardly the worst weapon in the series or anything, it's just a really good example of how most of the boss weapons just aren't as impressive when you try to use them. And number 6 is the head of Uriel from God of War 2. In the original God of War games on PS2, Kratos gets a lot of his powers from enemies and bosses. Not all of them are weapons exactly, and a lot of the time they're basically just as good, if not better, than when the boss had them when Kratos gets them, but that's just not really the case here. The head of Uriel is not even as good a weapon as what it replaces from the first game, let alone nearly as good as what the boss uses. Uriel, who's the boss of the Temple of Uriel in the Bog of the Forgotten in an early part of the game, is literally a sister of Medusa, so you can probably guess what they do as a boss. Most of the fight is spent trying to avoid her stone gaze, which can kill you if you stand in it for too long. Because of this, she is actually one of the harder bosses in the game, because death can hit you at any moment. When you kill her, you get her head as a weapon, and it works pretty much exactly the same as Medusa's gaze from the first game. You can freeze enemies and shatter them if you use it, but it does take a lot of magic power, and certain enemies are pretty immune to its effects. Obviously, the Gorgon Queen doesn't have that drawback. She will use her gaze as much as she likes. To add insult to injury, the head isn't even as good as it was in the first game. Doesn't work on Gorgons this time. In the original, it worked perfectly fine, so yeah, kind of disappointing all around. The boss can use its gaze powers basically as much as it wants to, while for Kratos just eats up the magic meter. I don't know, it's one of those ones where it's just like, why'd you do this, guys? Like, if you're gonna include it, include it. And number 5 is Wraiths from Halo 2. Not exactly a boss, but Wraiths are some of the most dangerous vehicles in the Halo series, and Halo 2 was the first one you could actually commandeer one and use it against the Covenant. These things can be very scary. They got this nasty plasma mortar and this huge splash area along with 2 plasma cannons on the front. You'd think that you'd be able to use those cannons, sort of like how you can use the machine gun on the human tank, but no, in Halo 2 at least, you're stuck just using the plasma mortar when you hijack one of these things. This little drawback makes the things a lot less useful to take. Like, the mortar is powerful, but really slow to fire, and even slower to hit. So unless you got a massive target, it's likely that you'll miss. And with no other weapon you can actually use, you're kind of just a sitting duck in it. It's less of an awesome weapon and more of a hovering target when you get it. At number 4 is the military Jeep from Dead Rising. You know exactly what I am talking about. You know them. You hate them. I'm talking about the convict boss from Dead Rising. You know, he ain't my boy, but the brother is heavy, that guy. It's a song that'll be seared into your brain when you play this game enough. These guys are absolute bastards, and they will ruin your day anytime you pass through the Central Park at the mall. They don't go away. They're always there, chase you down in their truck, and just being a big old pain in the ass. Taking them out's not easy either. It always ends up being time-consuming and awkward because this is a game about brawling zombies, not getting the shootouts with moving vehicles. Just dealing with these guys really sucks, and you might think the reward for beating them will be worth it, like my very own military Jeep. This is gonna be sweet. And sure, it's pretty cool at first, at least before you realize there are a few problems. Like the Jeep can't leave the park and underground tunnels area, breaks down pretty fast after driving through enough zombies. You can remove the machine gun, And this thing is actually one of the most powerful weapons in the game, but the problem is that it's special, you can't keep it in your inventory, and the ammo on it is limited. So you don't get much use outside of mowing down some zombies, which is fun, but it doesn't last. To make matters worse, if you try to take it in the main area of the mall, disappears. These kinds of weapons don't carry over through loading screens, so the only place you can use this beastly weapon is in one place where you don't really need it. This is one case where the reward is actually really good, but there are other restrictive game mechanics that hold it back. And number 3 is the Gambler Asterisk from Bravely Default 2. The Bravely Default games are all about getting weapons from bosses. That's such a huge mechanic in these things. In this case, they're asterisks, which are basically jobs. The structure of the game sees you fighting bosses and obtaining their abilities, outside of having a lot more health and being slightly stronger to make up the fact that you're usually fighting these guys 4-on-1. The asterisks you get from bosses aren't normally way worse than what a boss uses, with a few major exceptions. This might be contentious, but for us, the one job that is far better when a boss uses it versus a player is the Gambler Asterisk, especially when you fight them again in the endgame to unlock their ultimate abilities. If you've played the Final Fantasy games with a gambler character or job, you probably have a good idea as to how the whole thing works. They've got a slot machine, roulette wheel that determines how many times they attack and how much damage they do. For the player, it's pretty random, so you can get some really good rolls, you can get some really bad rolls. But that is just clearly not the case for the endgame boss gambler. They always get 8s and 9s on their rolls, which makes them incredibly powerful and incredibly damaging. Seriously, their luck is ridiculous. It is obvious that it is not luck. It's simple as that. They do not get bad rolls. Sometimes they don't get perfect rolls, but they're at least good. Compare that to when you use the gambler job, you never get a good roll when you want it. For this example, it's all about the rules, and while you have to play by them, bosses can do whatever the hell they want, and the game weighs everything in their favor. This actually happens a lot in Bravely Default 2, but it is especially noticeable with gamblers. And number 2 is Excalibur from the Final Fantasy series. Yes, you heard that right. Excalibur, not Excalibur. Most of the time when this weapon shows up, it's a total joke. Kind of just a way to momentarily trick the player into thinking they got something good rather than just a big old piece of junk. What makes this thing so bad is that usually it only does 1 damage, and if the Final Fantasy wiki is anything to go on, it's often even given good stats, so if you select auto-equip, it'll automatically be equipped to your party, even though the thing is just absolutely worthless. It originally appeared in Final Fantasy IV, but it's most associated with Gilgamesh, who first appeared in 5. Like for this one, we're going to focus on Gilgamesh's appearance in 12, where he shows up as a bonus boss near the end of the game. You can fight him if you do Hunt 40, Battle on the Big Bridge, and even though you don't defeat him during this encounter, you still get the Excalibur for your efforts, and unsurprisingly, it sucks. Gilgamesh has slowly turned into a weird kind of comedy character who wields fake versions of a lot of iconic weapons from the series. He's never an easy boss though, and he can absolutely destroy you in certain games if you don't go in prepared. So while he can beat you and do tons of damage with his fake weapons, once you get them, they're useless. The Excalibur, don't let it fool you for a second. It sucks. At number 1, the Spark Shock from Mega Man 3. When we brought this one up, I was a hard advocate for this being number 1 on the list. Okay, so you know Mega Man. You select levels, you beat robot bosses, you get their weapons. The quality of those weapons is all over the place, but there's one weapon you can get from a boss that's arguably the worst, the Spark Shock. Here's the thing, Shockman isn't like unusually tough or anything. He hops around, shoots a big electric ball, he has a spread attack that can be a little dangerous, but he's not particularly tough or anything. That being said, his usage of the weapon, way stronger than your usage of the weapon. What makes the Spark Shock weapon so infamous is how useless it is. Like, at least when Sparkman attacks you, it actually does some damage. Yeah, you heard me right. All this thing does is stun enemies. I mean, that could be useful though, right? So you stun them and switch to another weapon. But no, here's actually the big problem. You can't switch to another weapon while a stun enemy is visible. Yeah, that's right. It actively makes it so you can't switch weapons, which would be the way that it would be useful in any way. This was eventually fixed with later versions of the game, but on the original Mega Man 3 on the NES, you would want to ignore this weapon like the plague. It is a boss weapon that wasn't even great when the boss used it. However, at least the boss could get some use out of it. It's worse than useless in your hands. It can get you killed. That's all for today, though. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you liked this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, Falcon Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on GameRanx.